Hello everyone, and welcome to the second meeting of Book Club A. I'm very excited that all of you are here. And first of all, just let me apologize for the delays about the links and the questions on this part. Uh, a lot of it was because of the fact that we were negotiating and talking about a lot of other things and deciding how to schedule this, particularly because we wanted to accommodate people from different time zones, right? Because that was a complaint we received last time around that there weren't enough, the time we chose wasn't very convenient for different time zones. Also, I repeated it. I mentioned this at the beginning, but I'm going to mention this again. I have a sore throat and a cold. My voice might sound very off, so I apologize for that. And if you can't hear me, please mention it in the chat, or if I, miss out on something. So, yeah, and as you all know, we're going to be discussing Jhumpa Lahiri's whereabouts. Jhumpa Lahiri is a personal favorite. I have read absolutely everything written by her. In fact, in other words, is one of my, I know it's sacrilegious to say that, for bibliophiles particularly to have one favorite book, and I don't. But if I could mention, like, say, five favorite books, it would easily be in the list. In other words, is absolutely one book that changed my perspective on life. I, I don't know, I can't praise that book enough. Before we jump into the book, I have a few announcements. I think we've sent out the mail for the next month's book, and as given as that this group is doing fiction this month, we'll be doing non-fiction for this group next month. And we've chosen Remnants of a Separation by Achal Malhotra. Some of you might have heard of the book. It's a beautiful book which documents the history of the partition by interviewing people and talking to them about the objects that remember or save during the time of partition or separation, as Archer calls it, right? It's been published by HarperCollins. I've sent to everyone the link, and it'll be a great read, particularly the fact that our next meeting will be around 15th August. Another announcement is the fact that the book club is officially now in a tie-up with Penguin India, so that's something huge that's happening for all of us. Penguin reached out to us. They really liked the work. They really liked Kitabi Karwan and the stuff, books in general, our bookstagram, and they loved the book club and they wanted to work with us. So, unfortunately, because of how it was going about for August, we could only figure out a fiction book from Penguin's end, and that's why we'll be doing a giveaway for the other group, where we'll be giving away three copies of A Passage North. That's a book that's chosen for them. It's releasing on 13th July, and as usual, I'll be circulating the link to that as well. But here's a surprise for all of you. I know a lot of you might have been upset about the fact that you don't get to participate in the giveaway. Uh, I don't know how many of you know this, but I run a podcast as well, named the Kitabi Karwan podcast. And one of the former guests has been Achal Malhotra herself, and I've spoken to her extensively about her book. So I reached out to her and I was trying to get her to record a special message or, like, a 5-minute perspective so that I could screen it at the next meeting. But Achal, being the sweetheart she is, has offered to come in and do a half an hour live interaction with all of you at the next meeting that we have. Given that we figured out the dates well, and we are aiming for 7th and 8th August, this is all tentative right now, but all goes well. This group will get to interact with Achal Malhotra exclusively. All your questions you can directly ask her live on the meeting. And yeah, I mean that's something that's an opportunity I killed for. I was chasing Achal for the podcast for ages. And I think after reading the book, you'll have hundreds of questions for her as well. Now let's just come back to whereabouts and our meeting today. Um, I'd sent along a post of my Instagram post about whereabouts because I couldn't live without posting about Jhumpa Lahiri on my personal feed. But for me, this was a very interesting book. Particularly, the thing that stood out for me was the fact that, as a Jhumpa Lahiri fan, it was a very different book from her usual fiction work because, some people say she gave birth to the entire genre of Indian diaspora novels by bringing her unique culture and her unique upbringing and capturing that experience. But if you follow her interviews or her journey over the past few years, she's been very vocal about trying to develop a different identity, of trying to be a different person, right? And again, I don't know how many of you read this up, but sometime around 2012, 2013, she just randomly decided to shift to Italy, Rome, because She always felt an affinity towards Italian as a language, and she just decided to shift there with her family, learn the Italian language, and write in it. In fact, in other words, the book that I mentioned was written in Italian and translated by someone else. But Whereabouts is a unique book because it was written by her, firstly in Italian, and then translated back to English by herself. The other bit that stood out for me was the fact that there's no identity given to the protagonist apart from a few basic details about her. You know how old she is. She's roughly 46. We know something that she's an academic. She's a writer. We don't know what. We don't exactly know what she teaches. And the book is, for me, it was beautiful, particularly because it taught me to focus on moments that, well, all of us just generally don't care about, right? I mean, when was the last time you sat down in at your desk and just thought about, well, just sitting down at your desk and what you're doing there, what your role is in life, right? I mean, we always tend to, I mean, I'm a huge Bollywood fan and I love grand gestures, and that's where I associate big things with, right? You know, you go through something major, you think about life and you go through things, or you associate love with grand gestures through giving of a rose and things like that. But like here, I mean, there was so unique of Jhumpa to particularly talk about, her friend's husband, like that kind. It's a kind of love which is not really often spoken of, but I think almost all of us experience at least once in our lifetime, where it's not off limits. It's not necessarily something that you want to chase. It's not something you want to go after, but it exists. There is an attraction, there is a chemistry, there is something flowing between you, but you don't really get much into it apart from those tiny moments together. Or for that matter, how she just, goes about the fact that she talks to a barista a lot. She has a regular cafe she goes to. She eats the same sandwich thrice a week, and like there's this entire tiny chapter about how she enjoys the sandwich that she's eating. Right. So anyway, I won't take up much more of your time. We do have a few reference questions that we'd set around. But before that, I would just like to open the floor directly if anyone wants to just make opening comments. Oh, I'm so sorry about this. Uh, so Navya isn't here with us for this meeting as of now, because there were certain personal reasons which I think she would rather not have me mention on the group. But she might join in at any point of time. So I would let her make a comment then about her opinion on the book. But in the meantime, if there is anyone who wishes to speak or open up the floor for discussion, we could probably go ahead with that. You could just raise your hand and I can start letting you talk. Uh, Eti Singh, I'm sorry, I'm not sure of the pronunciation. I'll just unmute you. You can let me know. You're the first one.
Hi, hello. Yes, so hi everyone. First of all, my name is Iti. So you were
Iti.
partially right, Siddharth.
Right.
Um, Other than that, I am so excited to be here and meet all of you and hear what you felt about this work, because personally, I just love the entire experience of celebrating little moments. Um, as a person who loves slow living and just who likes to just sit around with my own plants and just do nothing and just drink water. I absolutely love this book, and I have just one thing to say. There's this place, I think, in the first chapter or something. She says that it's a routine spectacle, almost impossible to capture. I feel this sentence sort of bounds the entire book together. That it's about those little small moments which just I mean, in general we don't capture them at all, but this is the entire book. I mean, there are like some 100 and over 200 pages written about those impossible to capture moments. So I just love that thing about the book. And yeah, that this is all like that I have to say in small moments.
Thank you, Iti. That was a really nice way to put it, and you're absolutely right. I mean, exactly that sentence actually captures the book very well together, and we have so many of these moments happening in life. But again, I won't be taking up more time. We have Suhani Mohan. I'm just gonna unmute you. Others, you can just keep raising your hands, and I'll keep recognizing and unmuting you as and when we keep going. Right?
Hello everyone, I'm Sohani. So as Iti just said that the Jhumpa Lahiri captures all the beautiful moments, all the small moments actually that we might even overlook in our day-to-day life. And that reminded me of a experience that I shared when we used to go to school, the on offline version. Then I had a auntie in the canteen, so I had formed a great bond with her, and I didn't realize the importance back then. But when I was reading the book, and as you mentioned about the about about the character talking to the barista, I would cherish the moments that I spent with the auntie. She used to give me extra plate of maybe macaroni or the spring rolls just because I was so friendly to her. She was so friendly to me. I used to ask her, "How are you?" And at that time, I didn't really appreciate what importance that bond holds. But now I do, and I'm really grateful that I read this book and that you suggested it, because now I have a whole new perspective to life.
Right.
That's
Thank you, Suhani. I mean, and it's a couple of just funny things that came to my mind. Firstly, it's great that you spoke about an experience where you went to school, because in the past 1.5 years, I'm sure, like, I mean, if there are any school going or college going kids on this platform, uh, people do have something called a canteen where people go and eat food. If you've forgotten, that exists. But yeah, this is such a common experience with all of us, right? I mean, I'm sure. Like, I mean, I had a cafeteria guy in my college who I would go, and he knew the way I like my Maggie, and if he would see me in a bad mood, he wouldn't charge me for Maggie that day, right? Something along those lines. It was just those cute little moments which I didn't really. I mean, obviously, I appreciated back then, but the significance, the importance of that moment just comes out after just reading books like this, right? So I think we'll go with Varnika next, and Varnika Priyadarshini, and then we have Rajni's iPhone.
Hello, thanks.
Right.
I'm not that articulated enough. Okay, so just try to make sense whatever I just
No, that's
even if
perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine.
this was on like Siddharth, you because you're aware of because you mentioned earlier works and because you said that this book stood out to you most because it's completely different. You know what? For me, it was the opposite because I thought that it is complete signature style of Jhumpa Lahiri because you whether you read
Right.
the namesake or the lowland or the unaccustomed earth, everywhere it's a foreign land. You're trying to make roots, like you're trying to find something, you're trying to just get hold of the whole place, and you're just trying to make that place like you're comfortable in that space, but also you know that you're a bit different, you're foreign to that place. So it's completely a tussle. It's a complete signature style of Jhumpa Lahiri. So it's whether it's like unaccustomed earth, talking about people those that come from India, settled in US, lowland, uh, giving a major book of the communism in Bengal and then the whole vibe of it, and then getting to that place. Here also in Italy, trying to figure out like and that
Right.
place we don't even know it with where this whole thing is there. It's like trying to figure out like there's a foreignness, but there is also um, habitation, like just feeling that you are one of the people, like you are indigenous to that land, but still then you feel that you're completely foreign to that place.
Right.
I thought that this was the thing that I admire about the thing because as a person who has shifted a lot, like as a child, like either who has
Hmm.
got a multicultural upbringing.
Ji.
That's what it connects me to Larry's style because it's just that it's Larry writes the whole tacit, the strain very beautifully. Like it's not romanticizing, also not just what I don't have better words for it. Yeah, it's the way it is, but also beautiful words. Like yeah, that's
Right. Right.
yeah.
Th- Thank you, Varnika. And like, I'll just because you pointed out, I'll just get back to you on this, because for why it stood out for me was uh so all of her earlier works, as you pointed out, is about her discovering her identity as a generational Indian who's born into the United States and born to Bengali parents who are struggling or have struggled their entire life to adjust there. And a lot of it is identity crisis and trying to discover herself, a diaspora. But for me, what this book was rather more interesting was it was more of a self journey. like, I mean, from what it implied, this person had lived in this area for a very long time, was born, brought up there, did not have parents who were, she wasn't at war with the culture of the, not, okay, maybe not at war is an extreme, but maybe not at conflict with the culture. It was something of her own, but she was trying to figure herself more out. And that was what I meant. But you're absolutely right. I mean, we do see that usual style of Jhumpa's delving into the human nature and her in finding out their own identity. We have okay, Vanika, you can lower your hand, and everyone else, once you're done talking, you can lower your hand so that I can keep track of things. Rajni's iPhone, I think you're next. I'll just unmute you, followed by Ankita and then Shruti Chavan.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
So I think Varnika put out some really important points. And actually I was in Siddharth's club because I've read all of Jhumpa Lahiri, and I always felt that this book was a departure. And I went into it thinking, oh, this is Jhumpa Lahiri. It's like a known territory, known waters. We will have more of identity. We'll have more of belonging and feeling foreign and settling, etc. But I felt it was really like a private account. I felt I was reading somebody's diary, which was a very personal diary, and what the one which you would not share with anyone, and which you would write every night. So I felt it more like that. But I think Varnika put out really, her case was really well taken. And now I think I can see where, she's actually trying to when you sit and you think, sort of contemplating human behavior and, on belonging, etc. And I really like the work. In the beginning of the book, I would say that I found it a bit lonely. I don't know why, because we are not used to the style. We don't know the characters. We don't know. It's just a single person narrator. And I found that, oh my God, why is this woman so lonely? And then it took me a journey to understand, no, this is solitude. And she's actually not lonely, and there is like a line there. So it was a very nice, very beautiful, almost lyrical, it felt like a song, sometimes, that's so beautiful. And even today, if I pick up the book, I don't have to go chapter by chapter. I can pick up any chapter and I can just read it. And whether it is her swimming, the swimming chapter, oh my God, the way she's described swimming, I can like quote later on in the review in this club, but the way she's written about swimming, etc., it was so beautiful. So I really enjoyed, and I think I grew into liking this book. I did not immediately like it. So that was my take on it.
Right. And Rajni, it's so interesting that you brought up the point about, loneliness, and then how you realize it's solitude. And maybe we can like transcend into this later after everyone's who's already in line talking about this, because it's a question I've mentioned particularly in the mail we've sent out. That if you look at Jhumpa as a person, she's married, she has kids, she isn't, and from her public outspoken nature about this, she isn't a person who's lonely, right? Or is a person who enjoys, or is a person who has a single solitude. Maybe she has solitude, but as a fan. And for me, it's just a interesting way as to how an author is able to capture this, right? I mean, do you really think it's perfect, or like, I don't know, within an author's field of competence to be able to write about such deep an emotion which he or she might not have experienced at all at that particular age, right? Particularly say like, how the way she feels about her friend's daughter, and or about her friend's husband, right? Anyway, I think we have Ankita lined up next, followed by Shruti Chavan, and anyone else who wants to talk and sing. I'll just unmute. Ankita?
Hey. Hi everyone. Glad
Hi.
and a lot of points already well covered about the book. One thing for me, I'm mostly a non-fiction reader, so I had the chance to pick up fiction after really long. And Jhumpa Lahiri was, I think this is my first read from Jhumpa Lahiri, so I didn't know about the format and stuff. So from that point of view, the format did strike out, like what Rajni was saying. It's like you're reading somebody else's journal, and it does at times make you feel that do you really need to read the next thing? It's getting a little too personal. So I think at least I got that feeling reading this book. Touch upon like everyone said, on smaller nuances that this book touches, and how it brings solitude, not in the way that it's talked about, like a feeling, but it's mostly how in your day life it just seeps in person, and you don't even realize when you're experiencing that actual feeling of solitude, without kind of glamorizing it in like how it's done in a lot of other books. It's not a subject, it's not a chapter, but it lingers along in how the protagonist is still pondering on smaller little things that she's doing.
Right.
I think that is something that really stood out for me,
Right.
along with a lot of other stuff.
Right. Thank you, Ankita. Because and you know what, the bit that you mentioned, it actually takes me back to a very odd, and I know I don't mean to say this in a very demeaning way to any other author, right? Like almost everyone else, I've read Chetan Bhagat in my past.
Yeah.
Like I still read him as a guilty pleasure, and in fact, I've gone from like on hating on Chetan Bhagat to being someone like being far more accommodative of him, because well, we should not be judging reading culture at all, and I genuinely enjoy reading a lot of his work now. But anyway, one of the things that stood out in one of his books called Two States was there was a scene where he's at a Tamilian household and he's teaching his girlfriend's brother at 6 o'clock in the morning, and so there's some cooking happening in the house, preparing
Yeah.
for breakfast, and there are smells and everything running on. And he writes this one line, right? He writes, "If this was any other Booker Prize, something along those lines. I'm not quoting, but any other literary work which was Booker Prize winning, they would have 2 pages describing the essence of the smells
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and everything else. But I just started sneezing, and that was the line, right? And on the other end, we have something like this, right, where you take the most mundane moment of all time, right, eating a sandwich or like just
Yeah.
sitting in a cafe, eating alone, and deriving probably like the most important thoughts of your life from it, right? And that was something just, I don't know, that blew my mind. Like this comparison just came into my head when you was talking, and that just. Shruti, you're lined up next. And anyone else who wishes to talk, please raise your hands.
Yes, so I so agree with Ankita and Rajni on the point that even I expected something quite different from a fiction book, and even I was like, what is happening in the beginning? And even I felt that loneliness and everything. It took a little while to get the hang of the book, but once we start reading the book, we start appreciating little things of how, she describes a cafe or pool or anything, even that tree and everything. She has described it so well. So even now in lockdown, especially when we're sitting at home, we miss that, college or that cafe where we used to go, and we start observing a little bit more. And Siddharth, even I hated Chetan Bhagat in the beginning, but I went on to love his writing. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Hey, just for the record, I never hated on Chetan Bhagat in the beginning. I was a huge fan in the beginning. I used to like his work a lot, particularly Three Mistakes and Two States. Then I felt that he started writing a lot more like Bollywood scripts, which again I enjoyed because I like Bollywood, but didn't enjoy it as much as literature. But then I realized how classist my behavior is towards writing, because his work is actually enabling lakhs of people to read, to improve their English, to enable them to get into the act of writing, right? Uh, Shruti, are you still, do you want to talk, or is your hand raised? I'll just ask one sec. Shruti,
Yes,
yeah,
actually. I'm really sorry if I took it the wrong way, but yeah, similarly,
no, no,
even Three Mistakes, I really liked that book. But even
right,
I was really, choicy when it came to books. But yeah, even I like Chetan Bhagat, and even I like his rep for, books or
right,
everything, even his tweets and even the Bollywood scripts, like everything. So yeah,
right,
that's.
right. Okay, guys, let's just put the pin on the Chetan Bhagat Russian doll that we've opened here. I don't think we should go down that route here because we're doing a whereabouts here. But I think Rajni is lined up to speak next. I'll just, wow, I just lost. Uh, one second, let me just find it. Yeah. Rajni, hi. You
Yeah,
had you
hi.
raised your hand. Yeah.
Just quickly, not about Chetan Bhagat, but I'm just saying that I think it's such an important thing because we all are bookworms to understand this classist behavior within us. And we need to be more encouraging, because I know so many people who read things which, earlier I used to question and I used to judge. But I think it's so important to not do that and take a few steps back, because many people are learning to read with those books, and that is beautiful. Not everybody can handle a Jhumpa Lahiri, or an Arundhati Roy, for that matter, God of Small Things. Not everybody can handle immediately, right? Everybody sort of grows. And at any age, I know people started reading very, very simple sort of stuff at 50, but they really graduated. So I think the classes behavior bit, I totally I agree.
Right. Yeah, Rajni, that's a very, very fair point to make. And like, as I pointed out myself, like I was supremely guilty of being one of those people. And for that matter, the other side of things, right? Hating on people who don't like popular work, right? So for example, you'll find a lot of people hating on someone, be like, oh, how can you not like Harry Potter? Or how can you not like Lord of the Rings? Or I don't know, maybe like say Arundhati Roy or Jhumpa Lahiri for that matter, right? It fails to take into account the contextualness of every human being that exists, right? And as I think the more we evolve, I think the more we ought to kind of learn more about this. But I'm glad to hear this from everyone else on the group as well. We have Achal who wants to speak next. I'll just unmute her. Right. Hi, Achal. Achal. Yeah.
Hey, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible now.
Yeah, so contrary to maybe like a majority of people here, this was my first Jhumpa Lahiri's book. And like initially it took me a while to get the hang of it. I even like read a couple of chapters twice just to make sure that like, am I getting what she's trying to say? Because like certain things were very, I don't know, they were not linked. The chapters weren't linked that much. But like, I just like to say that like, I'm super glad to be a part of this book club, because like this book was suggested and I was able to pick it up because I really, really liked it. The way she's portrayed such little mundane things, and like it's such a heartwarming thing that like the personal story has been portrayed like this. And another thing, I think one chapter which really stood out was the one where she's describing that dead like rat thing. I was like, how can somebody describe that with such, I don't know, like it was super new to me. So I really, really like this style, and I'm glad that this book was suggested. So yeah.
Right. And I completely agree, Achal, that chapter about the rat, particularly like I have never ever read someone describe like, like that creepy feeling. I don't know if I can call it a creepy feeling, but I think all of us are aware of the feeling that I'm talking about, right? I mean, if you're passing on the road and you see some like a dead animal lying there, or I know, and it just that image that stays at the back of your head, or like you pass by and that scent stays by, and it just sticks. And that chapter was just one of those things, right? Like absolutely very well written. And yeah, and as for the chapters to not be linked, I think that was the intent behind it, given the fact that she wasn't trying to tell the protagonist's story, but rather just capture vignettes of her life and give them their individual importance. I think Suhani wants to talk next. And also, I've just been told that there are a lot of people who aren't able to raise their hands. So if that's the case, you can just post on the chat that you want to speak, and I'll recognize you. Or if you don't want to message on the public group, you can directly message me. Suhani, you can go next. I'll just unmute you. Yeah. And then Akshita after that. Oh, by the way, Akshita is one of my closest friends, one of my best friends from childhood. I'm glad she's part of the meeting today. And so, okay, the order is Suhani, Akshita, and we have Shrabani Suresh after this. Right, let's go.
Yeah, so continuing with what Achal just said, this was the first time when even I read Jhumpa Lahiri. And when I started reading, I was like, Suhani, you are not intelligent enough. You're not going to understand whatever she's writing, because I was like, why am I not able to make a link to all the chapters? Why am I not understanding the style? Because this was new to me. I have read conventional novels, I've read mystery novels, so they have a start, they have the end, they have the villain, they have the characters. But this was something new, and I really liked it. And as she mentioned that she writes so beautifully, and there's this chapter about the stationery, if you all remember, and that was I've been to a stationery, I've been going to the same stationery for so many years, and I don't think I have ever imagined myself thinking this way about a stationery, about the objects that are there, about being so excited to go to a stationery. So that is what Jhumpa Lahiri does to us, and because now I'm very excited to go to my stationery.
And Suhani, like that, you know that pain she writes about, like when it gets changed into a different store, like which is selling bags, it like it's something that you could feel, right? I think a lot. I think most of us have had it. Not maybe not a stationery store, but maybe I know an ice cream store or any store that you generally like would frequent. I think Akshita's like up next, followed by this second, Shabani Suresh. Right?
Hi guys. And I just had a really quick observation, and sorry if this has already been covered because I was a bit late at joining today's meeting. But I just wanted to follow on from what was being said earlier about your sort of class preventing you from, say, exploring certain genres or exploring certain authors. And I feel like maybe it's not just class, like sometimes our own inhibitions kind of restrict us to a certain genre of novel or a certain style of writing, and you start to expect a certain style of writing from some authors. And for me personally, I would have never read a book like this had it not been written by Jhumpa Lahiri, an author who I've previously read and really loved to read. And that's literally the only reason I picked up this book. And when I started reading it, I had similar feelings towards Sahani and everyone else on this call has said. Is it's basically like, what am I reading? It seems like someone's personal journal. But when I finally got through the book and put it down, I was so glad to have read it, because weirdly enough, it made me look forward to growing older and having that sense of self and that sense of self-confidence. And that's a really sort of strange feeling from me, because I'm the kind of person who would rather just be stuck in their early 20s forever if I could. But I was just like, it just gave me a sense of wanting to be that one with yourself almost.
Akshu, that was such a unique point you made, because it just made me think back about the chapter she wrote about her friend's daughter. I think the 16-year-old who's moved into a city, right? And like the protagonist has the exact opposite feeling. She is yearning for that early 20s or in fact early teens life of being uninhibited and not having those regrets, which the way she grew up, right?
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, I think we have Shravani up next to talk. I think I'll unmute her.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so talking about this thing about the friend's daughter, and there's one more chapter on the beautician. So what I felt is that even if you are lonely or not lonely or single or committed, there is a very natural feeling that she has described in this book, is that grass is always green on the other side. She is often seen describing that what the beautician's life, if she had such a life, or if she had been like the 16-year-old girl. So that I found that this we all do. We all at one point or the other compare our lives, and we think that, oh, her life or his life is more better than us. So this is the best thing that she did, that she has incorporated many common things that goes on in our minds, and we tend to forget it or we don't note it down, but she has included this in the part of her solitude. So that I think is very nice. And the one where she goes into the villa or a place where I think her friend owns for a vacation, on a self vacation that she goes there also, I think that there is also a difference between loneliness and aloneness. There are times when she enjoys being lonely, like around the hustle bustle of the crowd, of cafeteria or something, enjoying the sandwich, but sometimes she yearns for some things. So that where all means, the book explains that there are things that go unnoticed when it comes to solitude, and she has expressed it very nicely. And the place where she talks about the chapter called Street, in which she says that she chases her friends, two friends, a couple who is fighting. So she goes on. Actually, it is her curiosity which goes on to find out what happens. I thought that she was finding out that how it feels to be committed, and when they patch up, she just discontinues. So that all were amazing parts of this book. That's
Yeah.
all I have to say.
Thank you, Shamni. And just to like both of your points, I think the first one when you mentioned when she talks a lot about things that all of us have experienced. I largely agreed with it till one extent. And I give credit where it's due. It's not an original thought. Sorry, guys. I noticed it in one of the reviews I was reading, probably I think on The Guardian, where they mention just in passing about how there are very rare points where we see this person go to the extreme, right? There's just this one dinner party where she just goes, do you even know the fuck what you're talking about? Which is, let's admit it, a far more frequent occurrence in all of our lives, where you just snap or you just react or do something. But here the protagonist is largely very calm, very composed. So in a way, like if we go back to the analogy which we've been talking about being able to read someone's diary, it's as if you're reading like selected sections which are designed to show you the calmer and the more peaceful side of things, rather than like things where people are snapping or where you're doing something messed up. Like we don't see her ever say, for example, she often talks about like she talks about a few connections with different men that she's had like in her life. We never see her like make a mistake, right? I mean, we've never seen her fuck up anyway. We don't see her cheat on something. We don't see her cheat on a diet. We don't see her mess up her job. We don't see her doing anything that failing at something and documenting it down. So maybe that I think was one thing where she probably could have documented those things better. But then again, it's not something that was necessary for the book to progress. I think we have Rajni next, followed by Varnika.
Yeah, I think fair point. I have a point, but first, Siddharth, I would like to address to what you just said. I think it's very human. If you write about your days, you may only write the positives. It's so difficult to write about, oh, I failed, I sort of could have done better.
Right.
And this also brings me to the point that whether this is an autobiographical work, because it seems like in parts, but she's not this alone, as you just said, right? She's not. She's a full family woman. And I've seen all her interviews and most of the interviews, and she's been very vocal. It's not like she's very reserved. And I mean, her demeanor is, but she's not. She says whatever she needs to say. So, but it felt like an autobiographical work. And I think that's why maybe not a lot of negatives, because this I questioned as well, that everything is going absolutely floral. I mean, where are the, where are the self-critical sort of thoughts, There were not as many. And plus, okay, so my point being, I just wanted to read this out because I think all of us here, because we are bookworms, will familiarize with this. When she refused to lend her book, please tell me how many of you all really related to that, because I felt really guilty, and I have done this so many times. There is someone who comes in the house and they see my book and they don't even know what they're talking about, and they'll be like, oh, you read this? Oh, I don't like this. And it's really, and then they ask to if they can borrow your book, and this was so familiar, and I said no, I'm sorry, for whatever reasons. So this was something I just wanted to highlight.
Thank you for bringing that up, Rajni, because okay, so I'm 26 now and I've been reading ever since I was a kid. So I've had that exact experience. But ये होता था बचपन में अगर कोई guests आ रहे हैं, so obviously when you're like 12, you really can't say no to your parents, like friends coming over and they're like, can we borrow this? But it used to burn me like deep inside, like you can't really take my book away from me. And particularly because people don't treat your books right. In fact, back in college, I think I had a 5-year college course. Sometime in my 3rd or 4th year, I started a small like exclusive book club of like trusted bookworms whom you can lend and borrow from, and you can rely on them to not mess with your book or like fold pages or tear them or something along those lines. So yeah, I mean, I completely associate with
And not return your book. I mean, who does
those
that?
things. That's just let's just not
Yeah.
even deal with that trauma.
Yeah.
Right. I think Varnika was up next to talk. Varnika, sorry. Um, yeah, you're audible now.
I wanted to, I want to make the point like Sharbani did about the grass is greener on the other side. You know, at points I felt that, but at points I felt that the writer is projecting uh, her own realities on other people, on other instances. So for many a times, I didn't feel that grass is greener on the other side because you can see the starting with death, with the strained relationship of the couple, and then also the point. You took it a completely different takeaway, which I'm now thinking that I didn't see the couple fighting and she following them can be taken this way. I thought that because she had an experience of past very strained relationships of fighting and everything, so she was expecting कि यहाँ पे भी यही होने वाला है. So that's why this यहाँ projection हो रही थी अपने reality से उसके strained relationships with her father, and sometimes seeing that with वो teenager case में her conception of death, seeing that in the first very in the temple gravel case में वहाँ पे देखना. I thought many a times her तुम project कर रहे थे अपने realities इधर उधर. Yeah, so that was the thing. I was like, grass is greener कहीं दिखा मुझे. But especially with the couple, I was like कि भाई यार तो तुम कुछ ज़्यादा ही project कर रहे हो. Like, chill down. Take that at the point also.
And Varnika, but something that you mentioned, like this part about projecting yourself, I think it goes for the readers as well. Like, because I'll tell you my experience of reading it. So it's not that I gossip a lot, but it's not that I don't walk away from gossip. So for me, it was just like, oh, okay, maybe it was that instinct in her appealing to her that, okay, you know, that she's unnoticed by her friends. She's somewhat enamored by the husband. She's a very good friend of the other one. She senses some gossip, and that is probably one of the instincts that she's following there, right? And that could probably just have been my projection onto what I'm reading. But yeah, next, Ria had messaged on the group that she wants to speak. So I'll have Ria go next, followed by Shraddha Pai, followed by Shruti. I'll just unmute Ria. And again, guys, sorry for my voice. Ria, are you unmuted? Ria, could you reply in the chat if you can unmute yourself?
No, sorry, it was taking a while. My internet was lagging,
Right.
but
Oh,
I got
okay.
it. Hi guys, it's lovely to meet you all. I hope you feel better, Siddharth. You sound like you're a bit struggling. I hope you feel really better soon. Thank you so much for holding this anyway. So really, I wanted to speak about a point that you had made, actually, on not documenting, you know, the bad parts or, you know, the judgment on herself. It also comes to, I don't know if it's just me, but I kind of realized reading the book, which again, like everyone said, or whoever's never read her, it was a different, completely different thing from the usual reads. It's just that she's always been in her comfort zone, and like she kind of sticks to that all the way through. Like she hasn't really gone, you know, she goes to that same stationery shop, and then when that goes out, she feels sad because that's something she's done for so long. And, you know, her relationship with her mother, she hasn't really tried to improve it because it's kind of strained. And just like her daily mundane routine, like she hasn't, I mean, towards the end, she makes that big step, but really, like, if you look at it, I guess it's not about documenting the bad, but it's also just the fact that she probably was so comfortable in her zone. It was just like if she could close her eyes and do it. And I thought that was kind of cool that she was okay with that. She was okay with just being under the radar, if that makes sense. So that was an interesting perspective for me personally, is how I saw it, really. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ria. And yeah, like firstly, the question of not hosting this book club was just out of the question. Like that's not happening. We're not canceling meetings ever, guys. So we might postpone them, but we won't cancel them. And as for what you spoke about, I think that's a very interesting insight into how human nature works, right? And I think we just spoke about how uh, Jhumpa by nature has a very different uh, demeanor and way of doing things as opposed to her protagonist that's been put in her. I don't think she possesses. In fact, we see this. I really loved your parallel, particularly if I drew it with the chapter where she meets an academic at a conference, right? The one where she's bored at, and there's this guy in the room next door, and so she's always very curious about this person. And she's not enamored. Obviously, and that doesn't really capture what the feeling is, but she's interested about the person, right? And she's just curious about this person, but she's always so keen on being under the radar and not being too intrusive and too just like bursting into this screen. Like, I mean, I could have imagined myself like personally walking up to a person who I'm interested in, like not romantically, but in just generally, and go and talk to that person about, oh, hi, hello, whatever. But this didn't happen. Here she was just had an unspoken equation or a relation with this person, right? Okay, we have, and Suhani has just mentioned a great insight, which we guys can read on the chat, which comes from a psychology student, so has some credence behind it, as opposed to us just being bibliophiles. Next is Shraddha Pai, followed by Shruti Chavan. Shraddha, I'll just unmute you.
Hi. I have read Jhumpa Lahiri's earlier books, Namesake and Unaccustomed Earth. And what I realized was, in her earlier works, they are more about relationships between people, and of course about the immigrant life that she had in the US. But this book is more about belonging and what it means to belong to a particular place, because in the entire book, the chapters are based on the geographical locations, on the street, at the sidewalk, in the office. She's describing her meetings with other people or her observations in reference to a particular location. And I think, it shows a kind of, she was describing the rhythm in her life. Like, she does certain things at certain times. Like she goes to the beautician maybe twice a month. She'll go to the particular stationery shop. She'll go to the cafe, at particular time of the day to have a lunch. And she'll be having that, same sandwich every time. So there is a certain rhythm because maybe she's not married, she's living alone. She doesn't seem to have very close relationships with people, although she meets people, she gets along, but there doesn't seem to be any kind of a bonding, close bonds that she has, and that could also be because of the kind of relationships that she experienced as a child due to her parents' marriage. But that is what came through to me when I was reading this book, that she is always trying to find that, a kind of belonging,
Right.
And maybe that is why she's decided to relocate to another place. And, maybe she could find something better or, something different from what she is getting at this particular place.
Right. And Shraddha, that's such a unnerving feeling, right? Like, I mean, from what I understood in the book, she was born and brought up in that country, right? Like she was a resident of that place. She had experienced everything as if, and often you hear and talk of things, you have different experiences. I think Varnika or someone spoke about moving around in the same country, or like there are people who immigrate from one country to the other, right? But here you have a person who's by all means supposedly at home, right? Yet the feeling that you mentioned, not feeling as if they belong, that comes through, right? Like there is you can see that there is something nagging her. There's something at the back of her head. And that's probably why, like, that's the protagonist doesn't have those close equations that all of us might draw, right? As much as we would like to say that every human individual has their own way of being social, it is very strange to imagine such a solitude-based person who has practically no one person to go back to, right? We don't see that person's appearance at least in the book. And on that end, the fellowship that she gets at the end of the book, it's just that, I don't know, maybe Jhumpa's secret way of just adding a happily ever after kind of thing, that maybe she'll find success or happiness in that other place and find belongingness. And it's also a strange, I know, I don't know the tech, I'm forgetting the technical word for this, but a reference back to what actually happened with her, right? Like her reason for moving from New York to Rome was also like multifaceted, but the two key reasons being that, well, she had started to feel a constant feeling of her life was the lack of belongingness and an affinity towards Italian. So just a chance in life to move to Italy.
So
I think,
there
yeah,
in the
sorry.
there in the book there is also a very small chapter called "In My Head," where she is feeling very I don't know how to put it. She's getting ready to go out to work, and she doesn't know. She dresses up and she's eating her breakfast, and she's not there. In that moment, she's
Right.
thinking of something else, and she's not feeling the way she usually does. And that kind of permeates through the whole book. I felt, that sense of not being there, even though she is there at that particular place, yet she's not
Right.
there. I don't know if I am able to make sense.
No, of course you are, of course. And I think that does, that's, again, one of the key things about this book is something someone already mentioned this. It is a lot of the book talks about things that all of us have felt at some point or the other. So I think all of us do associate with that emotion. I think Shruti was recognized next. Shruti Chavan, I'll just unmute you.
So yes, I would like to add something of what was said earlier. So the thing I find most fascinating about this book is even the chapters are so different and unconnected, there is this underlying theme of belonging or solitude, and every chapter has something or the other thing which we completely relate to in ways unknown. Like, every chapter, one thing or the other, something is there. I don't know, it's the beauty of a writing or the incidents or what it is, but it's really, something we relate to. Or what I may be wrong, but this is what I've concluded, sort of, like everybody is feeling related to. And that gossip thing, it's so true. Like, it's human nature, I think, that we get drawn into the gossip and everything. So yeah, that's
Right. No, and so I know I don't really have much to add here, but so I'll let the next person to go. I think that's Ria who wanted to talk. I'll just unmute her.
Thank you. I'd actually like to add something onto what Shraddha just mentioned about, that odd thing where she kind of felt like disconnected. I think that was something I noticed quite often in the chapters. And there's a few quotes, like there's one in chapter In Nowhere where she's like, she feels disoriented, at odds, astray, bewildered, confused. And all of this, like, and it's a continuous thing. It's not just in this chapter. You see it in, I think, Up Ahead as well. She keeps talking about this kind of disassociation. And I think that's great how Jhumpa kind of captured that. I don't know the author enough to make assumptions about how she's in real life. But the way she kind of captured that, you feel that out of body experience, like you're watching yourself from another area. And I thought that was quite interesting. It's because, she's going through this mundane life. It's usual for her. There's nothing new. She's trying to build that sense of belonging, but she's okay with the solitude. But at the same time, there's this constant like itch where she doesn't know something's missing, but she doesn't know what it is. And I think it's you kind of see hints of it when she's like, I'm confused, or I feel disoriented. And I thought that was greatly captured, that whole, disconnection within herself. But she could take a step back and be like, okay, I'm okay with this, and come back in and continue on. So that's, yeah, I thought I'd just add that. Thank you.
Right. Thanks you. Okay. So guys, at this point in time, I would just like to point out that there was one particular question I was very keen on hearing everyone's point on. It was the third question that I put out. That is, sorry, please excuse me. The fact that this novel was written in Italian and translated back to English. Do you think? I mean, did you notice this at any point of time and any place? And to that matter, how important do you think is the language of the work that you're reading is? Because unwittingly, I think a lot of the work that we read is, translated to that extent. Uh, let's say if I'm assuming a few of you are Murakami fans, all Murakami works translated. A lot of us are Gabriel Marquez fans, or at least have heard of him. His works are translated, right? A lot of, in fact, for that matter, a lot of regional Indian work has been translated. Like I remember one of my earlier podcast episodes with Dr. Debali Mukherjee. She translated Sunil Gangopadhyay's Blood or Rock. It was a Bengali book written in the 1960s into English. And while talking to her, we had a very interesting discussion about how in English, it doesn't really account for relationships in the same way an Indian language does, right? I can particularly only speak for Hindi, but I do know that this is there in across all in Indian languages where you have unique words for unique relationships. So like, there is a mama mami, there is a tauji taiji or taya tai, jo bhi, words you could use. But English doesn't have that. English just has an uncle aunt, which is like a standard across things. And all of us, and the larger point obviously comes back to being that language has so much cultural context to it, right? I mean, a nephew and say a nephew and his uncle's equation, or say a mama bhanja, bamba bhatija relation are just like two different things to be described in two different languages. So yeah, maybe like, I don't know, like obviously please feel free to talk about your own points, but I think I would just love to hear people talk about this because this intrigued me a bit. We have Sirvi Poker next, sorry, followed by Rajni and Iti again. And that's that. Once again, just unmute Sirvi. Yeah. Sirvi, are you unmuted? Guys, can anyone hear Sirvi? Could you just type in the chat box if you can hear him? I can't right now. Okay. Sirvi, I've asked you to unmute again. Let's just give this one more shot. Hi, Sirvi. Sirvi, I'm so sorry. I can see you, but I can't hear you. Maybe you could just like try logging out and logging in. I'll let Rajni speak until then, right?
Yeah, I think so that's a beautiful point that you made there, the third question. And I didn't think of it while reading the book, to be honest. I thought of it after reading your question. And then I sort of like thought back at it, and I felt, had Jhumpa Lahiri written in English first, maybe that kind of abandon which you find right now may not be present, because, when she writes English, it's such a familiar language. She may just go back to, the belonging, identity, immigration sort of a space. And I think for this kind of abandon, and this is a strange book, I mean, strange in a positive way, but it has that kind of sort of out of the world feeling. I mean, a person who is in a different planet, you don't know the name of where she is and who she is, etc. It has a sense of abandon. I'm not sure if she would have the same had she written in English first and then translated in Italian. Because there is one primary language of thinking. I'm a lawyer by profession, but I do write sometimes, and it is Hindi comes more naturally to me, right? When I write, I think it's my language of emotion. So if English is her language of emotion, I think writing in Italian first at least gave this extra strangeness to this book, an extra foreignness to this book, which maybe wouldn't have happened had she written in English first, maybe.
Right. And Rajni, great to know that you're a lawyer as well, because by training I'm a lawyer as well, although I'm
Okay.
not a practicing one.
Okay.
And the fact that you mentioned about languages takes me back to a very funny story. It's something that I read in a Tenali Raman story. I think some of you must have heard, must be familiar with it, but I'll just quickly narrate it. There was a linguist who arrived at, Deva Krishna Devaraya's court, and he challenged the king that, I can speak so many languages. I challenge you to recognize which language I can, is my native language. And Tenali Raman was put to task. So, in the middle of the night, he sneaks into this linguist's room and he takes like I don't know, a piece of wood or something and just pokes it in his ear. And this guy just goes uima, or like just responds in like some language
Yeah.
which is his native language, which just goes back to the exact same thing. There is a native language in which all of us think, right? And it is very curious in terms of cultural context as to what that is and what that implies for us, right? Or where we stand, particularly
Right.
for a lot of us, right? A lot of us, as I recognize from like the faces, and I'm making a lot of assumptions here, is that all of us seem like 90s kids. 90s, 2000s is when all of us seem to have come onto this planet. Some of us may be older, but most of us here, right? We've been born into an India which is post liberalization, right? We've seen an India which is a mix of the East and the West, right? We've grown like we're booming into the OTT culture right now, but we've grown up on Friends and How I Met Your Mother and all that. You get what I mean, right? And it is very interesting for me to think about how we think, because although we might have our own, like mother tongues and everything, but given that the fact that we might have a different form of education, that we were exposed to schools that we might have, some of us were privileged enough to have had decent English education. So a lot of us, like I particularly find myself thinking in English, right? Sometimes I find like as comfortable, like because you mentioned you're a lawyer, as comfortable as I am thinking about the Samvidhan, I'll always in my head while thinking it's still the Constitution of India, not the Bharat ka Samvidhan.
Yeah.
So I mean, that just speaks a lot about the culture, or like, the cultural context of where our society is heading, or at least the zone of people in which I'm hanging. Again, sorry, I tend to blabber a lot, guys. I'm so sorry about this. Iti, you're next, followed by Shraddha. I'll just unmute you.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, what a beautiful thought shared by Rajni. I mean, the nuances of the book were so. So first of all, I would like to share that when I started reading the book, I have this habit where I don't read about any review or anything about the book before picking it up, because I just want to I like reading a book as my first glance, and then I do all the research and I read all the reviews possible to see what I missed and what others could sort of share. So when I read the book, I had absolutely no idea that this was a translated work. I thought this is just a book she wrote in English, but somehow I was like, this is somewhere in Italy, like this is happening in Italy. I had this feeling that because there are little moments here and there in the book where the feeling, that Italian feeling stands out so loudly that you just can't ignore it. And then I read about it, that it was actually written in Italian first, and I was like, now it makes sense. And that's coming back to Rajni's point, that when you write something in the native language where the event is taking place, you sort of enhance the nuances which otherwise would have gotten missed in, for example, if I'm writing about my hometown, which is in Uttar Pradesh, I would prefer to write it in Hindi, because that will capture the Hindi heartland better, right? Because English, as Siddharth said, does not have words for so many things here and there. So if she had, just written it in English first, she would have missed those Italian nuances here and there, I feel. So it was actually a very pleasant revelation once I finished reading the book, that it was actually a translated work. And I, for one, sort of, I have a very love-hate relationship with translated works. Like some I absolutely love, and some I'm like, why did you spoil it? And I think that comes especially from the Hindi work, because I relate with Hindi work a lot because it's my mother tongue. And then when I read it in translated work, I'm like, no, you spoiled this moment. But for other languages which I can't understand, for example, this Italian one or Japanese or anything, I'm like, oh, now great. At least I am being part of something that otherwise I would have never gotten to read. So yeah, that's very, I don't know, it's a love-hate relationship with the translated work that I would say. Thank you.
Right. First of all, Iti, high five. And even my hometown's from the north, and my family belongs to Kanpur. But then, as I say this, I realize that could be like 20-25% of all of India because population. But the interesting bit about your the way you spoke about your love-hate relationship with translation, right? Think of it this way. We feel as if we're participating in a larger culture by reading translated work. But at the same time, think of what you feel when you're reading, like, say, a not well translated work. You feel that your work has been spoiled. So let's just, for example, take Murakami, right? If I might feel that I'm reading something from the Japanese culture, associating with it, and I might to a large extent. But from, say, a native Japanese point of view, who's read that work in Japanese, that person's perspective might be, oh my God, the translator has just messed up what my culture stands for or what it actually means to be Japanese, right? And I know, I mean, I don't see a way around that discrepancy. Before we move on to Shraddha, I'll just check in with Sirvi if he can talk again because he couldn't talk. Sirvi, I'll just unmute you if you can just try talking. Sirvi, are you here? Yeah.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me now, or it's still
Yeah,
not?
Sirvi. Yes, Sirvi, we can hear you now. Great, great.
Perfect. Yeah, actually, I wrote the message if my internet is not working, so just mute me and keep doing vital. Okay. So I found that when I was reading, I didn't research about the book or the writer. I just read the book like on the third or fourth chapter, that pizza chapter, that trattoria. And like, what is this word? Like, I searching my mind in Hindi, like I never heard the word trattoria anything. But then after I googled, then I thought, okay, she's in Italy, and now she's writing or is translated. But the thing is when we started the meeting, I heard everyone, and I felt like I am from the third world because I never read any book from Jhumpa, and this is the first time I went with the fiction. Till now I only read only non-fiction books, so it was totally new for me. Like first 3 chapters, I was like, okay, Sirvi, I'm doing just for like reading or I'm really reading. But after that, I got in that point. But the main thing what I found in this book or the writer is like living in the right moment only. Like I read the book, The Power of Now, and the whole book is summarized in one word by Jhumpa. It's like she's so at the moment, like that. The best example is that sandwich, no? Like she's so much in that sandwich. Like when I ate like a lot of sandwich and a lot of time, but now I remember that okay, I was eating on the bus in the bus and something, but they described it very well. So that good point I learned from her is like being in the moment and exploring the world. And one experience I would like to share, it's a little bit funny. I went to Italy and in Venice city. There actually went with 3 people. So I was like very in my mind only. I generally don't look around. But one of my friends, she read a lot of books and she was like just describing like how beautiful is the cafe, how beautiful is the cafe machine, how good is that the person who is taking the bill. And I was like, yeah, okay, let them do their work. Let's just enjoy our coffee. But now when I realized, like when I read that chapter, that pizza chapter, I just remember my like last experience, like how idiot I was. Like I was not focusing on the moment, on not the beautiful moment, but just on in my mind. So I found that chapter very close to my experience, and now I can remember everything. So thank you for that. Like, so it was a nice recommendation.
Right. And Sirvi, it's a very interesting thing that you brought up the sandwich again, and also the fact that when she talks a lot about the barista she talks to or the cafe she frequents, because I think it's a very unique thing, and I think Suhani is a psychology student, so she can talk a bit about this, about how our senses form such core parts of our memory, right? Like, I mean, sometimes you can associate, like, I know you eat something really nice and you can associate everything with that particular memory. And you remember every bite, every taste, every, Just the way maybe I know like Jhumpa would write in her book, exactly the same way will be your memory. So yeah, that's a very, I don't know, unique thing that stands out. I think Shraddha is up to talk next. I'll unmute her.
Yeah, hi.
Right.
We were talking about the translation thing, and most of the books that you mentioned, which were translated from other languages, have been translated by other people, not by the author themselves. Whereas here, Jhumpa Lahiri herself has translated this book in English.
Right.
And I think that is what has made a big difference. Because usually when you translate from another language, there are some idioms or some sayings, which you cannot capture in another language. And somewhere that essence gets lost.
Right.
That I think has not happened over here. We are able to, she has been able to capture the essence of that place. So even, one of the participants just mentioned that, she doesn't read any reviews or anything. She just started reading the book and she realized it was Italy. And, it is from those small things that she had mentioned that you could get that essence of her being in that particular place, the descriptions, the different places, or the kind of food that she was eating, the kind of experiences that she was having. And I think it is because that she has translated it herself. She has been able to, it was as if she was writing in the native language. I don't know what she has written in Italian. But I think if you compare both the books, maybe someone who knows Italian compares it with English, I don't think they will find much of a difference in the way she has written.
Right. No, and that's a very unique take on this, Shraddha, because very like oddly, Jhumpa herself has an opposite take on this. If you read her book in other words, which was not written in Italian but translated by someone else, there she particularly talks about this, that that if you translate a work and even if you read it back to a person who understands both languages or is aware with both cultures, they would miss out on something, because the ability to as you said, she's done a really good job, and that actually reflects on her as a writer much more than anything else, that she's able to capture Italy and the Italian culture a lot more in her, even in her translation. But Jhumpa just has a very odd, different view on this, that according to her, the cultural context, obviously, which to a very far extent is a fair point to make, cannot completely be captured in a translation, even if it's self-translated, because there is a bias that would creep in as to how you are acquiring that language. For example, all of us learned, maybe that's me being presumptive. I was born into a family that speaks Hindi, like that's our mother tongue. I learned English at school as a primary language, but it was something that was taught to me in school. So for me, using English idioms or proverbs as part of, like conversational sentences with my family is going to, and if I ever decide to be a writer, writing it down would feel particularly odd for me, right? Or even when I go about with the translation job. For that matter, one of my favorite authors, Anuja Chauhan, I don't know how many of you have read any of her works, but if you have, you'll probably understand what I'm saying, does a very unique thing here. What she does is, she decides that there are certain words which just can't exist in any other language. So she decides to continue with it in Hindi, right? Writing it in that Romanized way, which is just such a refreshing way of reading things, right? And in fact, I recently spoke to Meera Sethi on a podcast where she did the exact same thing. She's like, you can't really describe. She was writing about something, and she wrote a gulab jamun or a rasgulla as a gulab jamun or a rasgulla, and she particularly spoke about, well, I could have chosen to describe it as a dough ball dipped in like a liquid or whatever, but then I was like, no, that will really take away from the context of what I'm trying to tell people, and I just want to stick with that word. So yeah, I think that's a very decisive way of looking at work in general, that well, where is it coming from and how is the author particularly going about acquiring this. But as we are running out of time, I won't take up more time. I'll let the other people speak. I think Suraj has his hand raised, so I'll unmute him.
Hi everyone. So I just wanted to make a point on translation. I think it's a very tricky task to translate. You always tend to think to yourself that am I doing justice to the original piece? And according to me, how it works is that you somehow need to dig deeper into the mind of protagonist. That at that particular moment, what is the state of mind of the protagonist? And as everyone said that in each and every language, there are certain words which cannot be literally translated into English or any other particular language which they intend to. For example, I was learning Mandarin for an internship, and there were so many words which I could not literally translate into Hindi or English. And somehow, even when I was trying to translate them, I couldn't capture the beauty of those words in the literal sense. So I think that's a tricky task to translate another language.
Right. Right. And guys, before, like, I mean, because we're wrapping up and listen, I wanted to actually talk about like the first question back again, because we don't really have a lot of time back left. I would want just maybe if anyone wants to pitch in on this. So, I mean, again, it's a personal feeling. I don't know how many of you agree or disagree, but most of us tend to look at life, you know, in larger perspective of things that, you know, oh, my achievement is, say, something like, for me, it would be, oh, I graduated law school, or, you know, I opened a firm or like a business, or, you know, I got married, I fell in love. Like the key, like you benchmark your goals or your achievements, right? But somehow, like that adage, like as I mentioned, like the sum of the parts is actually greater, right? But ironically enough, it's the parts in itself are so, for a lack of better word, mundane, right? I mean, the day-to-day life of going to college is so, I mean, it has its fun, but it's largely boring. The day, like after a point of time, after the honeymoon period of a relationship, it's just your usual stuff. Like, you know, you come back home, you talk about stuff, you're like, okay, that's it, that's about it. Or you guys get what I mean. The day-to-day routine of life is quite boring. So, like, how do you resolve this dichotomy in your head, right? That somehow you're enjoying the goal, but the process is not necessarily something that is making you sad, but not even happy at the same time. Anyone like who wants to pitch in on this? I don't have people here on raising their hands, but so I'm assuming people are like, we're done with the discussion, so we'll wrap this up. Like, oh wait, there is someone who wants to talk. Perfect. Shruti, you could, I'll unmute you.
So that's, you know, one of the biggest takeaways from reading this book, you know, that everyday routine is so boring. And even I used to think that way. But from this book, I have learned to find beauty or observe the small things, or the beauty of the things we do every day, like eating a sandwich or going to the cafeteria. You know, that's my biggest takeaway from this book, to find enjoyment, or I'm not getting a right word, but you know, to find beauty in the small moments. Because I also thought that routines are boring, or even I find college life boring sometimes. But after reading these books, I'm trying to like observe, okay, what am I going to miss about this, or you know, those small movements. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, we have Ankita next, followed by Rajni.
I think I just wanted to chip in to say that we probably don't really cherish our day-to-day things, and the part of the process is mostly, in most cases, a little mundane, like what Sid said. But the fact that at least the Indian society, we're also conditioned to kind of just celebrate the milestones in life, right? You celebrate your marriage or your graduation like one big affair. You're not told to celebrate your first, I don't know, A+ in school, or anything as trivial as a day-to-day sandwich for that matter. So I think that's also probably in my case is to do with the conditioning and how get life, that we need to achieve these 5 things by this age and all of those so-called goals that we set up. Probably that's a subconscious thing which makes us behave like this. I think just that little thought.
That's quite fascinating to, like, when you put it in that perspective of conditioning. And we have a very interesting comment by Achal. We can try romanticizing the mundane things in our head, which makes perfect sense. Rajni, I think you're next.
Yeah. So I think it's okay. I don't know why I feel very old right now, but I think I was a very sort of the milestone achieving checklist kind of a person earlier. But now I feel, that phrase about it's about the journey and not the destination. And I think that really sort of, when you start loving what you're doing, or when you start enjoying your life every day on a day-to-day basis, I think that should be something, that is something that I aspire to do. I don't want to live with any further checklist. I think it's done. School, okay, you do 10th, 12th, you do graduation, you rank this, that, get that job. But I think that's an aspiration, that you try and live in the moment and try and sort of, I'm not saying enjoy, all moments are not enjoyable. Like, let's be honest, sometimes you're sad, accept it, it's okay, move on. But it's more aspirational to me. And I think that's what I also take away from this book, that, okay, just observe things a little more. When you're spending time with your mother, especially, the point that she wrote about her mother, it was very beautiful. We don't really think about aging parents, and she's written about illness and about her mother and her relationship with her mother. I think these things are so unique, and I feel that maybe, we can aspire to sort of be in the moment, the times we spend with our parents and the time we spend with our friends, etc., a little more than, what tomorrow holds for us or, what we can achieve by the end of, my resolution and my checklist, etc. So I think it's more aspirational from that front.
Right. Thank you, Rajni. Thank you. And I think on that note, we should wrap up today's meeting. I'll just for a second, I'll just unmute everyone, and so that if anyone wants to add anything, they can. Yeah, I have asked everyone to unmute. Great. But yeah, thank you guys. This was absolutely lovely. I genuinely enjoyed this. Wow, my voice is echoing. I think I'll just keep everyone on mute. Sorry. Bad call on my part. Sorry. But yeah, this was lovely. This was genuinely, like, again, and that was the idea behind the book club, right? There is an experience of reading the book, and then there is an experience of actually being able to, like, go into the nitty-gritties, decipher it, and experience it on another level. And yeah, I mean, that's something I particularly very much enjoyed, and I hope all of you did. And I really hope you guys enjoy the next month's book. I personally have read the book already earlier, and it's one of my most, on a personal level, because it is personal tales. I used to read like one chapter a day because I found them slightly on the heavier end. Also, a trigger warning for everyone. Because it deals with partition, it deals with certain traumatic incidents that happened in people's life. So please be careful while reading the book. And we would send an email out about this as well. Also, if I could just do a small self plug before we end the meeting, there's this app called Backstage, which is somewhat similar to Clubhouse, where you can have audio chats. I'll be interviewing Kabir Bedi on Monday at around 8 p.m. on that app about his memoir stories I tell. If that's something that interests you, please head over, check it out. I will email out the link to people. And again, for the last time, I'm apologizing for my voice. I can hear how bad I am sounding right now and how broken it is. So, but thank you so much for bearing with me and joining us today. Bye-bye. I'll see you all next time. Bye.